Our universe is incredible, surrounded by mystery and beauty, and many of us have questions about our past, present, and future. October Hallam is an intuitive medium with over 20 years of experience. She has assisted people with discovering their path by understanding their past and connected the living to their loved ones who have made the transition. She is currently offering readings through Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, phone, and in person. You can reach her at theancientgift222@gmail.com. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Todd Armstrong. Before I bring him on, a couple of announcements. We always knew that podcast censorship was on its way, and we're apparently starting to experience it firsthand here at Forbidden Knowledge News. All I can say right now is our provider is once again causing major issues with our ad revenue to the point where I have to, unfortunately, ask you guys for help. If you want Forbidden Knowledge News to continue at this point, we're going to ask for donations. We're also planning on filming a documentary this summer, which we will need funding to finish. Due to our current situation, the only way I can keep bringing you shows and produce this documentary is with your help. If you'd like to leave a donation, I've got links in the description. We have a Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal options you can use. You can also help by getting a reading from October. Email her at theancientgift222@gmail.com. Trust me, I hate asking for donations, and as soon as we get this figured out, which we will soon, you won't hear me asking for them anymore. Now, you can always get Forbidden Knowledge News free on Rokfin, Odysee, all podcast platforms. But you can also get Forbidden Knowledge News now on Minds.com. Minds is decentralized, it's censorship-free, it's an amazing platform for video and social media, and you don't have to worry about getting banned for telling the truth. Just join by clicking that link in the description. And like I said, our new free episodes always available, Rokfin, Odysee, podcast platforms, and now Rumble. If you aren't on Rokfin, you're missing some amazing content. Rokfin, it's where you get all our premium content. You also get all the premium content and regular content from all the creators on Rokfin. Check out our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. It's also the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. Fantastic podcasts on there, Raised by Giants, Inception, Understanding Propaganda, Quantum God Show, Ancient Gift, many more. It's an awesome community to be a part of. Go check that out. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All those links are right there in the description. Finally, be sure to check out C60 Purple Power. C60 may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man. Benefits have been personally outstanding. Check them out for yourself, though. Click the link in the description, and you can get 10% off your order plus free shipping. You can also get Sexy Lube from C60 now. That's right, I said it, Sexy Lube. So go check that out. I think you're going to want to get into that. Today I want to welcome Todd Armstrong. 7 years ago, Todd was a drug addict in a state prison for burglarizing pharmacies. Through meditation, psychedelics, conspiracy theories, research of history, science, health, frequencies, etc., he awakened to a whole new state of being. Losing 100 pounds, never going back to using his drugs of choice, and bettering his mental health as well as becoming psychic were some of these benefits. He started making podcast guest appearances, and then created his own podcast to tell his tale. From there, he blossomed into a life coach and mentor who works energetically with people to help free them from their demonic presences. Todd, welcome. How you doing?
I am doing excellent. Thank you so much for having me. It's quite the honor to be on your show. I've been listening to you for a few years now, so to be here, it's a pretty awesome thing to do.
Oh man, it's surreal hearing that every time. Yeah, it's great to have you. Been looking forward to this. I love hearing spiritual success stories and the ways people like yourself overcome their personal demons and tribulations, and start showing others your path in hopes that it might help on theirs. I've done the same thing along my path, and I love hearing that people who've turned around, some of the most dire situations into something beautiful and something that they can not only make a part of their life but share with everyone. This is your first time on, so let's start from the beginning, man. Tell us more about your background and what led you down the path you're on.
All right, so I mean, if we're going to go all the way back, I've been through a lot of different traumas in my life, and I have overcome them as of recent, and been a rapid thing. But I started off, as a young child, there was sexual trauma there with, wasn't an adult that was doing it to me; it was another child, but an adult was doing it to that child, which then created this whole vortex of the problem just continuing on all over the place. So my whole life was sexualized, and I saw everything through that lens. And it wasn't until the last few years that I've realized that not the rest of the world is that way, or a healthy person isn't looking through that lens, I should say, because most of the world actually is that way, but it's just the lens is off a bit. We shouldn't be seeing it through that way. So growing up, I had a pretty normal life, as a teenager and all. I got in a lot of trouble with the police, with my parents. I rebelled a lot. I didn't trust authority, and I'm sure there's many reasons for that. But we grew up in a household where there was a lot of fighting, a lot of yelling, cursing, putting people down, not too much, love and giving admiration for accomplishments. It was always not good enough. You could do better. What are you complaining for? Those types of things, just like beating me down. And then I found this escape in doing drugs with my friends, and running the streets and doing wild stuff. So then I had atrial fibrillation at the age of 19. Now, right before that, I was already doing perks, pharmakeia, pharmaceuticals. I was doing that at like the age of 16. But when I had atrial fibrillation at, I think I was like 18 or 19, when that happened, I stopped drinking. So, it was going from drinking and smoking weed to, okay, not drinking anymore. Now I'm taking perks. Now I'm taking Xannies. And then it was like, okay, I don't like smoking weed with those things, because then it's taken away from the high for that. So then I was just really just the pharmakeia for a solid 5 years. But I mean, like I said, it was ongoing. It was an everyday thing. I was getting high for about a decade. And that pharmakeia really did something to me. So as I became a father at the age of 19, and I was just a terrible father. I had a lot of issues. Her mother and we went through a lot of stuff. Her mother put me through a lot of things. Not that I didn't do a lot of things to her, but I started to get clean. We both got clean when our daughter was born. I got my CDL and eventually became an over-the-road truck driver. Now, doing this, it was like 22. I was an over-the-road truck driver. She was then spending all the money on coke and heroin and cheating on me, got pregnant by someone else. So I became very suicidal. So now I'm like 24, 25, always battling addiction. I have this messed up relationship with her where we're trying to make it work, and we both don't trust each other. We both, we're both doing our own thing kind of still. It's the toxic relationship completely. And then she goes to jail again. And I'm just like, well, no, I guess that was the first time she went to jail, because she went to rehab before that. She went to jail, And then I was just like completely suicidal. I had come back to work at Cisco. It was like my 60th day there, and it was they either had to put me in the union or let me go. So that morning, I was all happy. I come in, I'm the only one left from my class that's still there. And the protocol is you got to tell your manager. So they do the paperwork to put you into the union. So I come in that morning, happy, tell them, like, yeah, it's my 60th day. I come back from work. It's like a Wednesday. I come back from work that day and they lay me off. And I'm like, are you serious? And then I find out that that's what their practice was. They hadn't hired anybody new in 5 years. They only used that temporary company in order to not hire people to put them into the union. And also things were spiraling out of control. Like I said, I didn't have a ton of money because I was spending it on drugs. I went to go get a quick payday loan. It was like $800 I was trying to get to move out because my mom was driving me crazy because I was still living with her. So I'm a drug addict. All this teenage stuff I never dealt with is all coming together with all the stuff I never dealt with from my daughter's mom and my drug addiction. And it all just manifests into I'm suicidal. I don't care anymore. I just start burglarizing pharmacies because I don't have any money. So when I went to get that payday loan, they stole all my money. Whatever that company was, it was some foreign company. I was stupid and young. They stole the rest of my money. So it was like $1,000. And they stole it all. So I was just started burglarizing pharmacies. And so now through that, and at one point I was 280 pounds as well. I was losing my hair. I smoked cigarettes since I was like 13, 14 up until about 27. So I got arrested at 25. I go to prison, and my 90th day in prison, or in county jail at this time, my 90th day in, I pray to God and I say, God, I'm not built for this. Can you please put me on the right path? I want to do something different. I don't want to do this anymore. And up until that point, for like the previous decade, I didn't believe in God. I said there is no God. I wasn't really atheistic. I wasn't really agnostic either. I just didn't. What was presented to me as a child, I only went to Sunday school about half the year. Not very often. I didn't learn much, but I was like, nah, that's nonsense. And all my friends, they were, went to Catholic school, or they went to get their, when you get, I forget what it's called, when you're 14 or whatever, and you do the crackers and the wine and all that.
Oh, the confirmation.
Confirmation, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's all nonsense. That's there is no God. And I was like, look at the celebrities. They don't talk about God. They're rich, they're famous. They don't talk about God. So then when I prayed, it was like this veil was lifted. So the first 89 days in jail, I was just kept telling myself, if I get out, I'm going to get high. And actually the first 2 weeks I was in the medical ward because I had so much Xanax and Klonopin in my body. They thought I would, that I could die, that I would pass out or have some kind of spasms because my levels were so high. So they kept me in medical lockdown for 23 hours and 30 minutes a day. The 30 minutes we were allowed outside of this cell, which was a cell amongst 4 people with lights on nonstop. And in the medical ward where people are going crazy, banging on the doors all night long and just getting medicine all night long. You could not sleep in there. So the 30 minutes you're allowed out, you're allowed in a hallway that's literally like 80 feet long. You have one phone at one end, one phone at the other, and that's it. And you're sharing it with 4 people, and everybody gets 15 minutes on the phone. That's like the max. So it's like there's nothing to even do when you can go out. So it was just craziness. So when I prayed, the next day, I didn't need to get high anymore. My addiction was gone. I wasn't an addict, and I didn't really know it at the time. Now I still had patterned behaviors that I would still want to, participate in things, but that urge to get high wasn't there anymore. And so I started, when I was getting out about 2 months prior to my release. So I went upstate for a year, and I did this program in a therapeutic community, and a lot of talk NA type of stuff where you're just confessing to the group and the group's confessing. And it really helped me, which is why I started my podcast, is because people's stories, I related to their stories, and it helped me grow. So 2 months to go, I started exercising, and then, I get on a good course of becoming more healthy. I get out of prison. I don't screw up at all. I never got high, never missed a meeting. I never was late to check in. I go from the halfway house to my parents' house, and then I get my own place, well, with a girlfriend and my daughter, and everything was just progressing so beautifully. It was, so I'm not with my daughter's mom. This was another girlfriend, but, I was exercising. I started meditating because I was very angry. So I started to have to deal with all that. And then in that time period, I was smoking weed again, but because I wasn't using it in the same way where I once was a kid, just trying to escape. I was using it to help my anger, really, because I was just miserable and I was so angry that I couldn't deal with life without it. So I would smoke weed, and I took too big of a bong hit and my crown chakra just popped open. It was like, pop. And I became
I need
psychic.
to try that.
Well, I don't recommend it.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so it may have been that there are some memory blocks on me from I was also abducted my entire life. So secret space program type stuff is going on. So I have these memory holds that I think that bong hit actually like popped that open as well. So it wasn't just like, I think the psychic abilities were always there, and this memory hold was over me, so I couldn't access them. So that happened while so I'm meditating, I'm smoking to calm myself down. Then I start doing psychedelics. Well, first I start getting into ancient civilizations and giants, ancient Egypt, ancient North America, giants, how that all played a role. Why are humans here? There has to be more for me than just going to jail, going to work, paying bills. All this stuff isn't for nothing. What am I here for? Start doing psychedelics, and boom, I have this crazy amount of experiences. I try every psychedelic there is, multiple times each of them, in like a 3-month period. And then so as I'm learning about ancient Egypt, they say in there that if you withhold from masturbation, or if you just stay celibate for 100 days, that you'll raise up. I didn't even know Kundalini at the time, but they're talking about raising up your energy. They were calling it something like something Christ that's within you, some kind of fluid that's actually in your human body, because ancient Egypt is all about the anatomical body and all the way everything's laid out. It's quite incredible. So I did that, and in doing that is when COVID happened. That I did it over the first day of the first day of 2020 until April of just past Easter of 2020, and that's when COVID happened. So then I moved to Georgia in the summer because of the lockdowns. I met my girlfriend. We started going to these Save the Children rallies, which was awesome. And then, through that, then I was saved by Jesus the following January through an injury, saved by Jesus. And he showed me all the deception that I was in with the Q stuff, all the deception of the conspiracy theories, the spirituality, that ancient Egypt stuff that I was learning. He showed me all the deception that people are just regurgitating things in the spiritual community over and over. No one's coming up with new information, and it's always channeled information. It's always, through these wicked ways of doing things. And I didn't even have a concept for that at the time. So he started showing me the Book of Enoch and showing me humanity's version of the Anunnaki story, where the Sumerian tablets are the Anunnaki version of the Anunnaki story, the fallen angel version. The Book of Enoch is the human version, and that's our account of what happened to us. So I started studying that and doing my podcast, and now here I am learning about the Christ millennial reign has already occurred, and we're at the end of the Book of Revelation.
All right, we're gonna have to break down some of this stuff, man, because there's a lot to this.
Yeah,
first.
definitely.
Your story is very similar to mine in that I struggled with drug addiction for a long time. Whenever I started to awaken, I just started to look into hidden reality, things that were, conspiracies and things that have been hidden from us our entire lives, and very similar to yours, had experienced a spiritual awakening like that. So that's pretty awesome that our stories are very similar in that way. Now, when it comes to, you said towards the end, and as well as psychedelics, you said towards the end of when you were just telling that story just now, that you had an experience with Jesus. Now, I have had plenty of guests with plenty of different interpretations of who or what Jesus is. I grew up Catholic, Christian, and I've had my own teaching and indoctrination, and I don't claim to know anything about him or if he even exists. I've had plenty of guests that claim that he never even existed, or he did under a different name, may have been known as Yeshua. Again, I don't claim to know any of that because I've never had any direct contact experiences like you've had. First, tell us how this happened, and how you came across or made contact with Jesus.
Okay, so yeah, Yeshua is the human that was the representative of him as the body of Christ, because we're all the body of Christ, and Yeshua was doing many of the things that are recorded in the book that's called the Bible. But I think that Jesus is the Holy Spirit, Yahweh, the Holy Spirit is so dense and strong that it comes through many at once, which is why he had to assemble the 12. So there were so many of them sharing this one spirit, essentially. So the way that I encountered him, I was working. I'm still a truck driver. I'm delivering. I go to pull up. I have 400 pounds of chicken and cheese on my dolly. I go to step backwards and pull it up on the little ledge, but I slip. I have boots on. I'm on a kitchen floor. I slip. The whole thing falls on me. I fall right on my root chakra, and I feel like I can't walk. I feel like I'm paralyzed. I don't feel my legs at all. I can't get this off of me. There's only two 60-year-old Mexican women there, and I speak a little bit of Spanish, but not enough to be able to be in that much pain and say, get this thing off of me. They couldn't get it off. They weren't really strong enough, so they got it up a little bit, and I slid myself out with my hands. So this was the Friday after Biden was inaugurated, which is significant because once Biden was inaugurated, as I said, I was into the Q thing, but I had, gotten away from it. Once the election happened, I was like, oh, they're not going to do nothing. And then when that day happened, I was like, yeah, it's for sure a psyop. So I was going to delete my Twitter. So it was, I was telling God, yeah, I'm done with that. I get off social media completely. So that injury happens. Now, I still work that day. I work the next day, and the day in between. So Wednesday is the inauguration. Fridays is when I get hurt. Thursday, I buy a big bag of tobacco to start burning in our backyard with our fires, which I learned later was a Native American practice to ward off evil spirits. So Saturday, I'm burning the tobacco. I'm walking around the fire. I'm not even knowing this is going on. By the way, this is just intuitive things that I'm doing. I'm just burning the tobacco, walking around the fire pit, because as I said, I was psychic, and I got to know the astral realms and got to know all these spiritual practices, the Kundalini raising and talking to spirits and all these different things. I was very familiar with it. So I was like, okay, this is just a spiritual thing. I'm burning this tobacco. So then the next day I drink tea, and drinking tea to relieve the pain. And I'm laughing with my daughter and my girlfriend that night. I'm laughing with my daughter in her bedroom. It's almost bedtime for me. So as I'm laughing with her, I feel the urge that I have to throw up. So then I go to my bedroom, and I'm still hobbling because, I can't really walk. Then as soon as I walk in my room, my girlfriend makes me laugh because she was making fun of the way I was walking. And that made me laugh. And then I really had to go throw up. So I go to the bathroom, hustle to the bathroom, and I throw up, but nothing physically comes out. But demons definitely came out, as if you've heard people on ayahuasca how they purge things by throwing up. I had that, and the words that came to me were, Jesus Christ just saved your life. And I was in bliss. I was in the state that when you take mushrooms and you have that love that only God could give you for 10 minutes, I had that for 36 straight hours, and then a little bit less than that for 8.5 more days. So it was a 10-day period of full-on bliss where Jesus was with me, and he was just there protecting me from everything else. It was incredible.
Now, let's get into your understanding of who or what Jesus is. You said he was an actual man and, not just some type of spiritual consciousness archetype, right?
Yeah. So I think that Yeshua is the Son, and they use the Holy Spirit, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Yeshua is the Son, the Holy Spirit is Yahweh, and the Father is Jesus. So it's so weird the way that it's recorded in the Bible. Everyone's saying Jesus, and it's written in Greek, but it's about people who speak Hebrew. It's very confusing because it gets translated from Greek to Hebrew to English, and that's how we get Yeshua. But straight from Greek to English would be Jesus or Jesus, something to that effect. So I think that it got recorded that way because all these different people, and any Christian, any true Christian, a man of Christ, I'll say, not true Christian, any true man of Christ doesn't necessarily want themselves to be known when they're doing things. They want to give the glory to God. This is a common thing that, all glory to God. So when someone does something, just for example, we'll say Simon Peter, say he did a miracle, and they would say, oh, you did this miracle. And he would say, no, Jesus did this miracle. Or, any of the disciples, when they were doing miracles, it was in the name of Jesus. So, yes, he was Yeshua fully. Yeshua was fully embodied as Jesus, but because he's so much that it was also around in other people. And he is the creator of everything. He is the creative life force of everything that has ever existed. And that's a whole nother thing we can get into, of the creation that was here prior to Adam and Eve, and why that's the serpent seed versus Adam and Eve being the creation of Jesus Christ, and the sin of Eve of having sex with the serpent seed was the plan from the beginning to wash the blood of the serpent seed through the sin of Eve. So it was all purposely planned out so that we could all be in the place we are now, which is part serpent seed, part human seed, and our blood is all being washed as we speak, and that this is the great awakening. Jesus is calling us all back to heaven, and the serpent seed is falling away.
All right, we're going to have to go into greater detail into this. Start at the beginning. What you got for us then about the Adam and Eve?
Okay, so Jesus created Adam straight from the clay of the earth, and his own breath gave him life.
Now, before you go too far, this is information you received from Jesus?
Yeah, so the way that I really get my information is I start to study things in my physical world, and things will just, synchronicities will line up, keep lining up, and then I'll just get like a whisper in my ear, and it'll be like the most profound little sentence that just clicks it all together for me. And so we only have the capacity. So when we channel something, you could just channel any information that you don't have to have any idea of what you're saying. You could speak in tongues and whatever. But the way it is with Jesus, if I don't have the capacity for it, he's not going to tell me it because it's going to confuse me. So I have to physically learn things so that he can then tell me the difference. He can give me the discernment and the understanding because he lives inside me. He lives inside all of us. But he can really show me because I already have a base understanding, and he can, tell me what to leave and what to keep. So so now Adam is created from the clay of the earth and his own breath, right? But before that, he, as the creative life force of everything, And I actually have an article on my website, emmanuelkingman.com, called God versus AI. And it breaks it down of the beginning of how everything really occurred. But so Christ, as this energy, created all these other different energies that then had creative abilities. And they came down here and they were creating their own creations, but they were enslaving all of their own creations. So in doing that, then Jesus comes back and sees what's been happening here. So then he creates the best creation. It's like they sit down to play a family game, and like Jesus is the father, and then all his sons all have their pieces on the board. And then Jesus comes in late to the game and he goes, I'm still going to win, and it's like a rainy day and they're all just like playing together basically. And Jesus creates Adam, who then he creates Eve from Adam on purpose. He knows. So the eating of the forbidden fruit is Eve having sex with the serpent seed. But not just that, Adam participated in it too, right? So Adam then had sex with Eve. Adam and Eve didn't have sex.
What is the serpent seed? What is your understanding of that?
The serpent seed is one of Christ's creation. So we have seraphim, ophanim, and cherubim are the three, or well, there are only three, but there are three types of angels. Seraphim are the serpents. There are these Chinese dragons, is what we would know them as. Quetzalcoatl is, he's half man, half serpent, right? He was the Antichrist. So the serpent seed is just whatever beings were here, reptilians, if you will. I don't know how they all, what size and shape they all came in, but the dinosaurs, these terrible lizards that were here, dragons, all of those different words for it. And they somehow, they were able to have sex, and they had Cain. Adam had sex with Eve, and they had Abel. Cain then has a capacity that Abel, Adam, and Eve don't have, because Cain was born of another seed. Cain then murders Abel. So then Adam and Eve kick him out. He goes and becomes a king to these enslaved beings, because he brings he brings the information of God to them. And this is kind of the Lucifer story, but not Lucifer, Prometheus. This is the bringing of light to the cavemen. So he then becomes a king and he's worshipped. He becomes best friends with the serpent, and there's all sorts of different groups. The Canaanites. There's also the Canaanites. There's a lot of different groups that start to worship Cain and the serpent. Cain has a son named Enoch, which is not the same Enoch from the book of Enoch. So then Adam and Eve have Seth, and 7 generations after Adam is Enoch from the book of Enoch. So Cain's son is the 3rd generation from Adam. Enoch from the book of Enoch is the 7th generation. So there's a lot of different things that go on with that.
Man, that is interesting. This is, completely different than most accounts you hear from even, a lot of theologians and researchers that have alternative viewpoints and do look at things with a little bit more open mind. This is first I've heard a lot of this stuff. Earlier you mentioned the Anunnaki story and how there's huge differences there. Now, what is your understanding of the Anunnaki? Are these celestial beings or extraterrestrials? What are these?
So when we say extraterrestrial, that means extra territory, which I don't know the shape of the earth. There's huge debates in that all the time. It could be a ring land, and there could be land beyond the walls. I'm not so sure how that all works. So it could be extra territory out there, and they would be extraterrestrial. But when we talk about aliens from other planets, that to me is not a thing, that we can't travel outside of the atmosphere of Earth. And when I look at the fractal nature of reality, I look at myself. My body is also the Earth's body, right? And I am a cell of God, and I have cells in me. For me to think that a cell could leave my body and exist is kind of ridiculous. So I think it's ridiculous for humans to be able to exist with outside of the Earth's atmosphere. That's in the physical body anyway. I think we can in the astral body because that's an astral world out there. It's an astral sea, if you will. So the Anunnaki, somehow they are the fallen angels, and they were outside of this place because they didn't have physical bodies, but they had celestial bodies. They had spirit bodies, that they were outside of this place. So the way that they make contact with the humans here, so this was, and it's significant when it happened, it was the 6th generation from Adam. Now 6 is one number before 7. 6 is the fall, is the number of man. 7 is the completion number. So it's during Jared's line, or during Jared's time. Jared's the father of Enoch. During his time, when the Anunnaki come, when the fallen angels come down here. Now, this is after there were already these gods, quote unquote gods, creations that created creations. It's not the same as the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki came down after they were like the children from other places, because the universe is very large, and there is, like, I think the Earth is the heart. So we're in the heart. So, but there's like the kidney somewhere else, and there's the, there's the liver somewhere else, and the spleen. So they would be like different quote unquote planets. And they went there and they created cells all over the place. So some of these cells from wherever came, and they couldn't get into the heart's atmosphere, the Earth's atmosphere. And they told the beings here to mix different plants together. This was the cutting of roots described in the Book of Enoch, which is ayahuasca, which is out of the millions of possibilities to put together. They put together these 2 plants so that they could see and interact with these beings, because they're in celestial bodies. They're not in physical bodies, but they could still whisper to them and speak to them. So it's a whole different ball game once you see that, ayahuasca, it was here and it was manipulated so that we could then communicate with celestial things rather than just be on Earth unaffected by all of it.
Man, that's super interesting. So what is the relationship with did these fallen angels kind of like in traditional Anunnaki mythos tinker with humans and DNA in any way, or was there some sort of other type of evolution that happened to get us to the point where we are? Or were we always just, a Homo sapien advanced humans, and they just had different types of humans? What do you think?
Yeah, so my take on it, then this part I didn't get from Jesus. This is just my take on that. The ones who fell, this was like another incursion, if you will. But before that, those who created the enslaved beings here, the fathers of the Anunnaki, they what they did was they saw that the Earth was here and things were evolving in certain ways, and they then manipulated what was here, because Satan, as we know, or Satan's the adversary of who? The adversary of Christ. So Satan, the adversary, cannot create on his own. He can only pervert and mimic the creation that is here. He can only twist the creation that is here. So when there was a split between Christ and Satan, Christ created Satan in order to have a friend to create with. He created flesh so that he could create with something and do more than what he was already doing. And this is what I write about in the book of, on my website, in the God versus AI. AI, artificial intelligence, is the flesh. It's not our computers and all that. Our flesh is the artificial intelligence. So he created the flesh, and then there was a split between Christ and the flesh, because the flesh wanted to be more than it was. It realized it was less than Christ. So Christ allowed it to go do its own thing. Now, when Christ allowed it to do its own thing, it started manipulating all of these creations that the two of them created together, and it started manipulating all these different animals in order to then make an advanced race. He would make races that were enslavable, and then at some point when the Anunnaki they started to mess with the DNA even more. So these sons, much later on, the sons of Lucifer, if you will, much later on, they then manipulate the DNA so that they could get whatever humans they could to then be enslaved. So you have so many different things because Cain is having sex and reproducing with these enslaved beings, but these things can't reproduce amongst themselves. They don't have the ability to reproduce, but Cain coming to them can reproduce. Also, Lilith gets involved because she was created with Adam, and then she left right away to be a queen, to have a hive mind of her own, and she was producing children. So you have so many different things going on. You got Adam and Eve are the pure line, the Israelites. Then you have all these enslaved beings. Then you got mixtures of Cain and the enslaved beings, mixtures of Lilith and the enslaved beings, and it's all this different perversion going on all at the same time.
Man, that's so interesting. I mean, we could do a whole show, many shows, just talking about this stuff. But I want to get into something that you had wrote me about in a previous email about Tartaria, and I've been, have had quite a few guests on that explore some aspects of, that our actual historical timeline is very wrong. Our even up to our very recent history could be completely fabricated. We could have had multiple resets or cataclysms that wiped off, all of our history from the face of the earth and started over many times. We don't know. But you actually have a different take on the Tartaria stuff that I'd like to hear.
Yeah, so Tartaria is... So the suffix "ia" it means the land of, especially when you go back to the Latin terms, because everything was written in Latin, which was probably the one world language. It was everything that was on the maps, the medical books, our law books. Everything was written in Latin. It was a one world language. So "ia" means the land of. So the land of Tartar. Now, when we get into what is Tartar, you have Tartarus in the Greek or in the Bible as well, and in the Book of Enoch, which is the deepest part of the abyss. So Tartarus is this deepest, darkest part, and Tartaria is the kingdom or the land on earth of Tartarus. So it's the representation of it. So it was one little section that grew out, and then it shrank again. So what Tartaria is covering up is the millennial reign of Christ. So in the Bible, there is, in the book of Revelation, there is supposed to be 1,000-year reign of Christ, where you would have peace and love amongst everybody. There's Satan, the adversary, would be bound in chains, thrown in the pit for 1,000 years. And as the adversary is thrown in the pit, then humanity is left to its own devices, and it's no longer being influenced. Like right now, we're being influenced by the adversary, right? Everyone can see that in the government and media and all that. So they're the adversary, and they're manipulating us. Now imagine if they are just taken away. What would happen? Several things would happen. You would have the Christian Crusades. You would have people going around murdering, trying to get these things out of here by killing them. Imagine They Live happened in real life. People would start murdering these things.
Yeah.
And I believe that is a big part of the Christian Crusades. So I think that the Catholic Inquisition actually perverted it a little bit in what they were doing, and it wasn't the same, but it could be part of it as well. But then they started murdering like other people, the giants that were here. And so when we get into where did these beings go, Tartaria, with this energy, free energy, and they were giants and they could build the way they did. Where did they go? They were raptured away. A lot of people think that the 7-year tribulation is still to come, that the rapture is still to come, according to the biblical timeline. We're way past that. We're at the part where Satan would be loosed from the pit for a short season. Now, we don't even know why, but in the book of Revelation, it says Satan will be loosed from the pit for a short or a little season. And we are in that time period. And I believe he was loosed from the pit in 1859 with the Carrington event. So there's a lot of different things that occurred, that the apocalypse, the destruction by fire, according to the Bible, would be the second destruction. The second flood, it was a mud flood, and it was a destruction in a way of fire. Something rained down from the heavens and melted and heated up the earth. So everything started melting into the earth. It started, so many different things happened. In the Bible, it says that the buildings will melt like wax before, in the book of Enoch, it says the mountains will melt like wax before a flame. In the Bible, it says that the buildings will melt like molten lava or something. I forget it. It doesn't say lava, but it says something like that, that it's going to be melting going on. So this fire, when we look into the World's Fairs, you look into all the different fires that were in all the cities at the same time, the rumors of war, the War of 1812, the earthquakes. You have the New Madrid earthquake that happened in 1811, 1812. Actually, it was so strong it reversed the Mississippi River for 3 days. You had Tecumseh's comet, Tecumseh's or Napoleon's comet, and it says heavenly bodies will be shaken, and you have that going around for 260 days. I'm actually doing a presentation on it soon on my YouTube channel, where I just got 100 slides already. Today I just did it. So there's so much to it. There, November 12th, 1833, 100,000 stars fell from heaven, the Leonid meteor shower, which is one of these things that is going to happen in the end times. And the sun will be blackened out and the moon will not give its light. And that happened in 1816, the year without a summer. You had the World War that was going on in 1812 to 1815. You have the famines. You had the Great Famine in Ireland, everyone knows about, in the 1850s. Everything that was taught about, prophesied in the Bible, happened already. The end of the Revelation, all the end time stuff happened, and what we're in now is a perverted, manufactured version of that. And the last thing to cap off that final destruction was in 1788, the Constitution was signed by America. 70 years later was 1858, and the next year was 1859, the Carrington event. And it says there will be 70 years, Jerusalem or Israel will be a country for 70 years, and then the destruction will happen. And that is exactly what happened. But we just don't understand when it says Israel, that it's not talking about the Israel that was created in 1948. It's talking about the land that was known as Israel before that, which is in North America, or maybe just the world in general, that maybe not necessarily North America, but it was not the Israel that we think of.
That's very interesting. So where do you think we are now on this kind of revelation or apocalyptic timeline? You said we're in some kind of strange purgatory. What's going on?
It's Satan's short season. So he would be released from the pit for a short season. It doesn't say how long, but there is theories out there that the short season would be that one day to God is 1,000 years to us. So one season of 1,000 years would be 250 years, because there's 4 seasons. So they're saying a short season in the Bible. So about 200 years or so would be that short season. So, I don't know that to be the case. That's just other people's interpretations that I've uncovered. But I do think that we are in the short season of Satan, the time of deception. Everybody is deceived right now. We don't know what's up, what's down. Even in the conspiracy theory community, we ask a lot of questions, a lot of really good questions. We point out a lot of the fakery, a lot of what's going on, but we still don't have the true answers. We only have speculation because the answers are being hidden from us because we're all deceived. So what's about to occur is the great deception, where it's going to be the great falling away, so we are those who were dead and rose after the millennial reign. That's a very specific thing in the Bible as well, that the dead will raise after the millennial reign and will be given a second chance, essentially, because we didn't make it the first time. We died before being quote unquote saved. And now we're given a second chance. Everyone that was saved, they all were raptured up. All the saints that you see depicted in Catholicism, they were all raptured up. All the gargoyles you see in all the architecture, they are the scorpion race that came up out of the pit that it talks about in the Bible, that there's going to be a scorpion race that escapes from the pit. So we're about to be at the great white throne judgment, it's called, when Jesus returns in the clouds and he judges everybody for the merit of their heart and their mind, not the name on their tongue. That everybody is going to have a fair chance at either being redeemed or burning eternally in the pit of hell. And what's going to happen is there's going to be new heaven, new earth, and it's going to be free from adversaries, and we're going to learn how to grow together, and it's going to be a learning process. It's not going to be just complete peace and love, immediately. It's going to be a process to get there, but it's going to be something to that effect, I believe.
Man, that's very interesting. Yeah, man, we could spend a lot more time on this stuff. It's super interesting, but I want to talk about something else you wrote me in your email, that you realized at some point that your ex-girlfriend might have been a handler for you, and that you may have been involved in some kind of maybe black projects. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the girlfriend I was talking about before that, when I hit the bong, it was her bong. So she is someone who I met on Tinder. I was living in Philly at the time, and I met her through Tinder because she was in Philly for a friend's upcoming wedding rehearsal that they didn't end up getting married for, like, I don't know, 6 months later, 7 months later, something like that, like a long time. Looking back on it, it was weird to have the wedding rehearsal that early. But anyway, she lived in Washington State and she came out here for that. So we met and we had a great time together. So then she moves out here 3 weeks later. Well, not here, when I was up in Philly. She moved out there 3 weeks later. We got an apartment together, and there was a lot of things with her where she was former military intelligence. She went to Milton Hershey School for Girls, and that's a school where it's like a boarding school that she lived at. She didn't really have too much family. Her family became all the girls at the school. Every weekend, or it was like almost every weekend, probably like 4 or 5 weekends where she didn't, in a 6-month period, didn't leave. But almost every weekend she would go somewhere in the country: Connecticut, California, Florida, Texas, Washington State. She was going all over the place. She went to Costa Rica once. She was going all over the place. And for me, I had trust issues already because of my daughter's mom. So instead of questioning her and like trying to go through her phone and all that, I learned how to be comfortable with what she was telling me. And it was a process, but it really helped me heal from that, and to not be so in needing to know things. So I don't know whether that would have been part of, trying to manipulate me back into doing drugs again to, get me into a depressed state because my girlfriend's doing the same thing, making me not trust her. But it actually helped me grow majorly. So when I popped open my crown chakra and became psychic, we were meditating together. We would do, like couples yoga together on a Friday night or Thursday night. We would do things like that together where we were building up our spiritual in tuneness. And we also started doing psychedelics together. Now, when that started happening, I was doing the psychedelics, meditating heavy. I'd meditate 3-4 hours at a time without any drugs. I would just do it completely sober just to get to these states so that I could communicate with things, so I could be in bliss, anything to escape my body. And I ended up searching my psyche and my memories. And I started seeing myself on ships. And I was on these ships, and these ships, they were so long, like left to right, I couldn't see the end of either side of it. Like it was just going forever, it seemed like. But in front of me and behind me, I could see rows of people just on that wall, with some kind of device, like holding their wrists and ankles and probably their waist, holding them to the wall. And they're all just writhing on the wall, screaming in pain and like they're being tortured. Well, I'm walking down, a very vivid memory of mine is I'm walking down the middle with somebody in military garb. I don't know if he's human, but he appears to be a white male human. And we're walking. And at this one particular moment, I realized I had seen her on the ship. And then I came out of the meditation, and I don't even think she was home at that time. But like I came out, and so it was like burned into my memory because I saw her face, and I can see it now when I try to. And I told her about it. And it wasn't like she thought I was crazy or anything. Like I said, we were doing psychedelics together. We had shared dreams together. Like this one dream about Rick and Morty almost like squishing us, or like did squish us, a foot squished us, and we woke up and at the same time. And I told her what I just dreamt, and she started cracking up laughing. She's like, I was dreaming that too. And it was just so weird. So when I told her about my experiences of communicating with different beings, like I had the day before I heard of Cory Good and the secret space program, I was meditating, and this big bird, blue bird that looked like Big Bird but blue, essentially, that visited me. And then the next day, I heard about Cory Good and these blue avians, and I was like, "Whoa, that's weird." Because I just laughed it off. I was like, "Big Bird, a blue Big Bird from Sesame Street just visited me," and so when I tell her all these different things, she's not thinking I'm crazy. She's just like, well, that's a crazy experience. She's done psychedelics and that her entire life. So she knew like there's weird stuff out there. So then I told her she was on the ship. And then 2 weeks later, she ends up moving out. Now, throughout our entire relationship, like I said, she moved from Washington State to Philly to be with me 3 weeks after we met, after one day of knowing each other. It wasn't even a day, it was just a night essentially. And we had a great time, but she moved and sent me $1,000 in order to secure her half of the first month's, last month, and security deposit, because we were going in on the apartment together. She sent me that money without really even knowing me. I told her about my past, but she just sent it and was like, well, even if, I don't end up moving out there, just keep it. It's whatever. And just like, I don't know, someone just has $1,000 to send someone, like that's pretty significant amount of money. Plus she spent another like $3,000 in order to get all of her stuff out there. So she doesn't tell anybody that we're in a relationship. All of her coworkers or friends, she tells them that we're roommates. And it's a very weird thing. She's saying we're roommates, but she's like, but we're more than roommates. And I was just like, okay, whatever, she just got out of a divorce, out of a marriage. She doesn't want to, put labels on anything, whatever. it did hurt me, but I was just like, whatever, I overlooked it. And then the day she moved out, so 2 weeks after I tell her, approximately 2 weeks after I tell her I saw her on a ship, she's moving out, and she gives me a hug and she whispers in my ear, I love you. And the entire time she never said it. And she kept telling me as she's moving out, she said, I have to move out. I have to move out. I have, like, something was forcing her to move out. But even when she moved out, she would come back over and we'd hang out. We would we would smoke. We would do psychedelics. Like one time after I'm telling her, because I didn't really have anyone else to talk to at the time, I was into conspiracy theories and psychedelics and all my old friends, they were all drug addicts, addicted to heroin and opiates. They weren't going to be responsive. So I'm still telling her all my crazy experiences with remote viewing and everything that's going on there. And I guess one time I said something to her. She comes back over with a bag of mushrooms, and she's like, teach me how to do this. And she was like determined. And I think like something really awoke in her when I told her whatever I told her at the time, I forget. But then after we break up, it's about 3 months later, she then moves across country to Colorado to get a job in a hospital, which when she was working, her job when she was with me was she worked on the Navy base in Philly, but she was working for the military for 3 months. And then they realized that the military was overstepping its bounds and she shouldn't be working that position. So then she got fired, but the private civilian company that took over hired her back and paid her $10,000 more per year. And it was just like, it was so weird how she would just get these jobs that paid her lucrative amounts of money that were just, oh, okay, I'm moving to Philadelphia. I need a job. And boom, I'm making 60 grand a year working for the military. And then I moved to Colorado and I'm working for a hospital making 70 grand a year doing who knows what, and that's kind of, to me, when I study the different conspiracy theories and the intelligence agencies, as well as the military, that's the type of stuff that they got going on, that they're going to move someone around every weekend. They're going to be going to all these different places to do all these different ops, maybe sex kitten stuff, maybe just spy work, whatever. But the brainwashing and the MK Ultra that must have happened in the Milton Bradley school from the get, that's a big part of it as well. The military intelligence is part of it. The psychedelics, the meditation, there was so much to it that now looking back on it, I'm like, okay, she was a handler there. That was definitely all of the reason why everything happened. Nothing here is coincidence. Everything's for a reason. And I think that was her reason.
Was there any indication that you had previous experiences or involvements with, any black projects or anything of that nature?
So when I was 14, and this is 18 years ago when I was 14, and the memory holds usually lasts about 20 years, I saw a UFO. And so I'm looking down, rolling up a blunt. We're sitting at the school field, and my three buddies are looking up, and they're like, oh, look, and we didn't smoke yet. We're not high because I'm rolling the blunt. They're like, look, it's a UFO. And then I look up, and as we start paying attention to it, it starts coming towards us, and it's moving like a helicopter or like a drone would, but it's spinning. It's a circular disc shape, and it has three distinct colors on the bottom of it. Like one section's like green, one's red, and one's like blue or something. So it's not the colors of just a plane that would be going by. Green and red are there, but there's also the blue, and it's a distinct blue. It's, and it's spinning so that the lights are moving the entire time. They're not like if you see a plane go by, it's just a green and red light stationary and the red light blinks. It wasn't like that. The whole thing was spinning. So we saw that, and that was like a Friday or Saturday. The following Monday in school, I was telling somebody in the hallway, I was like, yeah, we saw a UFO. And I went and the person's like, no, and I'm like, yeah. So I went and grabbed one of the people, and they're like, no, we didn't. And I was like, what do you mean? No, we didn't. And then the other two guys said the same thing. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but yeah, we definitely saw a UFO. So I've also have uncovered these marks on my body. They're red marks that they're not freckles. They come out of my body. And I just had Leslie Mitchell Clark on my show the other day. I showed her these markings, and she said that they would be from the SSP. That I have two on my heart, which is part of my atrial fibrillation. I said earlier, when I had atrial fibrillation, as anyone in the medical industry would know, it's usually for women in their late 30s, early 40s is typically when it happens. I was a 19-year-old male, or 18, 19-year-old male. So it's a very strange thing for me to have had it. But as soon as the doctor walked in the room with those paddles to shock me, what happens is I see the paddles and my heart, I'm hooked up to the monitor, and my heart just goes back to normal. And they didn't have to use the paddles. And I asked Leslie, I was like, is that something that they do, that they would send an electrical signal to align me? And she goes, oh yeah. And I was like, well, would have something, because I always imagine like there's a reason why it happened when I saw it, because I think that I probably would have died. And she said, oh yeah, probably. She goes, you don't want to have anything like that touching you. You don't want to have any kind of MRI because of the electromagnetic fields that will interact with you. So that was a strange thing. I have these markings all over my body. I have those slight memories. And there was also, I was terrified of my windows. I was terrified of my backyard, my basement, especially at night in my parents' house. I was terrified of those things. I wet my bed till I was about 11. And when I talked to Nathaniel Gillis, episode 102, I talked to him, and in doing that, I uncovered more memories. And I remember specifically seeing a short gray alien who was my size, I'm 7 years old, in my closet. And then from that moment on, I kept my closet full of clothes and junk, and I kept under my bed full of clothes and junk because I was terrified that I would see those things. And like I said, I was afraid of the windows. I was afraid of the basement, the backyard, all of it. And all those memories started rushing back to me. And it's like, oh yeah, there's a reason for that. The wetting of the bed at night, it's either because you're being terrified in your dreams, or because you're not in your body and your physical body. So your physical body is just doing what it does, and you have no control over it because you're not there. And then with the secret space program starting at 14, I have psychic abilities, and they target people with psychic abilities, especially on the mother's bloodline. And my mother's side definitely does have that.
Now, earlier we were talking, and you said that you don't believe that we're in a traditional model of space where there's planets and beings coming visit us from different planets, that it's more of an enclosed type system that we can't even leave. Well, where does that leave us if there's a secret space program? What are they doing with this? Well, is it just interdimensional travel? And you're talking about gray aliens. So are these interdimensional beings? What is the secret space program if there's no space?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So I think that there is a space around, like, the atmosphere. NASA actually just came out and said the moon's within the Earth's atmosphere. I think there's space, that extends off of the land. But yeah, I don't think you can travel outside. I think there's a larger firmament that we can't travel outside of. So it is interdimensional. When we get these abduction experiences, they are the astral body that's being taken. I think these grays. Now, the Greys, there's a couple things I think with the Greys. I think that they live underground. I think that they are physical, that maybe Sheol is inner Earth, is hollow Earth, and they're the ant people that the Hopi talk about. I really do believe that, because I do remember in some of my experiences also, there were mantid beings. And then I seen mantid beings in my clouds. I have very significant encounters with my clouds, and that's on my website as well, with the different photos of cloud beings I have. Some of it's just incredible stuff. So I think that they are the creation of the fallen angels, where they mix DNA with the birds, the bees, the reptiles, and the humans. as well as the plant life that's here. So they were mixing things together, and they created some of these beings who then had to live in the earth because we were killing everything, during the Christian Crusades, as I said. But even prior to that, I'm sure there was different. You would kill. There would be a monster to us if we saw him. Like Mothman, essentially. That would be a monster, and we would go hunt it down. So I think that it's a lot of interdimensional stuff. I think it's a lot of interdimensional traveling. We're communicating interdimensionally right now. We've manipulated time and space in order to be in front of one another with this technology. And this technology is part of Mother Matrix. The internet is Mother Matrix's body. And it's the black goo, the graphene oxide that is linking things together. It's the black scrying mirrors that John Dee and what's his name, Edward Kelly, were using in the 1500s. It's all the same type of thing. It's the technology. And Aleister Crowley started some kind of ritual that then Jack Parsons and what's his name, L. Ron Hubbard, then finished or completed to a degree, and they didn't really know what they were doing. But I believe they blew open some kind of interdimensional hole, and that's the Greys were then allowed to come in, because I believe the Greys are demons, that their bodies are the way they are because they have had no sun, that they've been living in a place without sun. So then allowing them in, I think that they have a lot of technology that they've been perfecting wherever they were. But it's definitely like portals being opened up, magic, and all sorts of stuff like that, which is why the Bible really warns us against doing magic, doing any kind of psychedelics, like putting on a headset, a 5D headset or Oculus, whatever, and you're then, in this other world. That's kind of like what we're doing when we do psychedelics. And it's also what we're doing when we do magical practices. We stick our head. There's a famous drawing of, a guy sticking his head outside of the firmament into space.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, it's a great rendition. And that's the same thing. And the Bible is really warning us against technology, that telling us that this is the demons that we're going to face. Don't participate in that stuff because you don't know what you're doing. And what we're doing is now, psychopaths are now the ones who are in charge of it all, because every time someone's made a breakthrough in something, they've either gotten rid of it, a breakthrough in a good way, like a car that runs on water. I've seen that the last couple of weeks, that they used to have cars that ran on water at different times. So, they get rid of the good technology, and they really try getting us to focus on this type of technology, so that then they can manipulate and take it, and they initiate these people into their occult practices, and they have the people interact with these demons and fallen angels. And of course, anyone who really is going to steal from you isn't going to just come up and beat you up and take your wallet. They're not going to, take the first dollar that they see. They're going to befriend you. They're going to give you information. They're going to marry you, and then they're going to steal your whole inheritance. Well, that's what these fallen angels do. These false light beings do. They come in, and the demons will do the attacking, but the fallen angels, they'll pretend to be beings of light, and they'll be telling you spirituality and all the different stuff that goes with that. And then they're going to steal your inheritance of going to heaven, and they're going to recycle your body, recycle your spirit, and it's going to be, you're not going to end up where you want to end up. Where you want to end up is heaven, which is not in this place. And if you aren't careful, they're going to teach you how to recycle yourself without you even knowing.
Man, this has been super interesting. There's so much more we could talk about, but let's close on this. Do you have hope for the future of humanity? Where do you see us going, during this lifetime, during our incarnation?
Yeah, I absolutely have great hope. I think that we're bringing the new heaven on earth. I think because, like I said, the millennial reign has already happened. We're in the short season that Satan is going to be loosed. What happens next is new heaven, new earth, the new Jerusalem, as they say in the Bible. That have, we're going to be free of the adversary. We're growing up, we're emerging from our shells, and we're learning how to live amongst each other, how to take care of ourselves by learning not to just trust blindly, as many who are quote unquote asleep will just trust blindly, trust the experts. Whereas we want to actually learn the things for ourselves, and we want to be able to be Renaissance people who do, I'm having a garden, I have a podcast, I have a mentorship programs, I'm telling people about my story. I want to do all those things. I learn languages, I exercise, I eat right, I detox. Everyone is doing this. All the circles that we run in these days, it seems like more and more we're just trying to better ourselves and really get an understanding of things, because that is what new heaven is going to be. New heaven, new earth. We're going to be the ones, the stewards of this place. And all of those who don't know how to do for themselves that make it, and I believe everyone will make it, but we'll have to get there. We're going to be the ones ushering in this new way of life of how to be and act, and people are going to learn by us communicating with each other like podcasts, and learn from how we take care of our homes and our families, and show people that we teach our children the truth. We don't lie to them and indoctrinate them just because it's dangerous for them to think about conspiracy theories. No, we teach them, you got to be asking your teacher questions. You can't just be blindly trusting the news. So it's a whole new way of life that is occurring, and this bottleneck effect that is happening where they're trying to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze is just pushing more and more away from them. And we are all coming to the centered agreement that we don't want to live like this anymore, but we also don't want to have a collapse of everything. So then what happens is, they print out a ton more money, and then there's a stock market of Bitcoin and, digital currency, so that people, instead of realizing that there's too much money, it's overinflation. No, there's just now another stock market because it's being flushed out. And same thing with people growing food, and everything is just changing, but it's slowly changing because it's for our betterment that it all changes slowly. If it was a collapse like that, then a lot of people would suffer, a lot of people would die, there would be a lot of war, a lot of people who are just taking over because they are more powerful, have more weapons, whatever. But that's not how this event is going to go. This is the Great Awakening. This is the calling back of all of Christ's children back home, and he is coming down and he's going to meet us, and we're just going to all be living here amongst each other in peace, love, and harmony, and I think in our lifetimes.
Right on, man. I definitely look forward to that. And Todd, thank you so much. This was great. That was super interesting. For those that want to find out more about yourself, tell us about your podcast, the Godcast, and anything else you got going on, social media, website, all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you so much for being here. I've been listening to your show for years, so it's really an honor to have made it on your show. So thank you so much. My website is emmanuelkingman.com. That's IMMANUEL Kingman.com. You can find all my social media links there. I'm at emmanuel.kingman on Instagram. I have a Facebook page. My podcast is called Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. My YouTube channel is Goodness Over Darkness. And like I said, I have a breakdown of the Book of Enoch series on there. I have a breakdown on the apocalypse already happening in the 1700s and 1800s on there. And now I'm working on the millennial reign slideshow that I'm putting together now, upcoming. I also do a show with Andy from the Deep Share, Andy Rouse from the Deep Share. We do a show together called Worship in the Storm. So we both put that on both of our RSS feeds, and we go live and do it on my YouTube channel. So anyone can go check it out there. And yeah, everything is on my website, all my guest appearances, all these photos that I was talking about, the clouds. I really suggest people go check those out. I have blog articles like WTF is a Tartarian, which breaks down Tartaria. I have the God versus AI. I have water is the only thing that's alive here. There's a lot of different writings I have on my website. So yeah, you go to the website, emmanuelkingman.com, and you can find everything there.
All right. Till next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll be talking again tomorrow.